Now everyone's here, we can start. Welcome to today's full council meeting, which is being held at Council Chamber, Portsmouth Guildhall. Thank you, members. I would firstly like to invite Very Reverend Dr. Anthony Kane, Dean of Portsmouth, to say short prayers.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Let us pray. God of life and peace, we thank you for our Lord Mayor and all who serve as councillors, praying for wisdom in decision-making amidst the challenges of our times, and a sense of the welfare and true needs of the people we serve. We particularly pray at this time for those struggling with the current heat wave, potentially some gathered here in this chamber, for our schools as the school year draws to a close, and for a fruitful and constructive council meeting this afternoon. May heaven's light be our guide. Amen.
Thank you very much for you are most welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, but we understand if you have to leave. Framing council proceeding for the attention of those members of the public wishing to record proceeding. The council rules prohibit filming, photographic or recording of members of the public, including those making deputation. Evacuation procedures. If the continuous fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the room, the public gallery by the stairwells. Do not attempt to use the lift, and please assemble at the turning point of the end of the King Henry Street. Microphone system and use. When speaking, simply press the talk button on the unit in front of you, and I will activate your microphone when I call you to speak. I'll also turn it off when the microphone once you have finished speaking. Now moving on to agenda item 1 of this council meeting, declaration of interests. Members, if you have any interest to declare in relation to
I got a personal declaration of interest in agenda item 13B.
That's been noted. Thank you. Any other members? Thank you. I'm learning. Actually, this is my first proper meeting, so please, members, the heat and everything, bear with me, and you can laugh and joke. A little bit fun is good, as we are getting ready for football. Right. We're moving on to agenda item number 2, the minutes of annual council meeting held on 19th of May, 2026. It's proposed by Councillor Steve Pitt and seconded by Councillor Starwicks. That minutes of the annual council meeting to be confirmed as a correct record. Are the minutes agreed? So agenda item 3, apologies and absence. Apologies have been received from Councillor Matthew Cody, Councillor Jara Charlotte, and Councillor Ian Holder. And I think, Susie is here, so. The notice of motion in the name of Councillor Jordan titled Keeping South Sea Seafront Clean During the Summer Months and Celebrating Portsmouth's Centenary Diversity will therefore be treated as abandoned under Standing Order 33. The written responses will be supplied to a question submitted under Standing Order 17. Agenda item 4, communication. Are there any announcements that you wish to make? No? Okay. Oh.
I've just got apologies for absence for Derek North.
Thank you. So now moving on to what? Item 5? Deputation from the public under? We don't have any. Okay, that's great. Let's go home. Right. That brings us to the end of the petitions for this meeting. Item 6, question from the public under Standing Order 25. No question from the public have been received. Moving to agenda number 7, appointments. Members received revised appointment to the Regulatory Committee of the Hampshire and the Solent Combined County Authority, along with the reason for those revised appointment have been included within agenda. Do I have a proposer and a seconder, please? Celeste, please.
Proposed, Lord Mayor.
Do I have a seconder, please? Oh, okay.
Seconded, my Lord Mayor.
Do any members wish to debate the matter? No? So, thank you. We shall now vote on this appointment. Can I have the show of the hands in favor, please? Carried? Oh, good. Eight, urgent businesses. The leader of the council has notified me of one of the items, urgent business, approving LGR Joint Committee terms of reference. This has been included within the green supplementary sheets. As the decision is required under Standing Order 26, the standing rules of debate apply. Do I have a proposer and a seconder?
Proposed, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Proposer, we have any?
Seconded, my Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Okay. Can I have the leader to speak on this, please?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Group leaders were advised in advance, and it was discussed at the group leaders meeting earlier. This is a procedural item that needs to be addressed, that was identified by the monitoring officers across the county who've been in a working group. And basically, there is, as part of the joint committees that will be formed under the structural change order to do with local government reorganisation that we're expecting to be submitted early in the new session of Parliament in the autumn, there are some powers which are executive and some which are not executive and therefore need to be approved by this meeting. So that's why it's there. It's a procedural thing. If anyone would like further clarification, then I suggest the city solicitor could offer it.
Back in the issues. Come on then. Oh.
Okay. Thank you. Point of clarification, I guess in terms of process, this is the first time I've kind of seen or heard of this. I appreciate it may have gone through group leaders, but as previously discussed, I don't get information for them because I'm not in a group. Obviously, I'm not in a position to support or otherwise an 8-page document that I haven't fully read. So I just wanted to put that on record. I appreciate sometimes there are time constraints and it may be a larger procedural thing, but I'd still want to read through something line by line before supporting it or otherwise. So just to make that point, I guess, on procedure, and hopefully it can be noted for future.
Thank you, Councillor Corkery. Noted.
So no debates.
That's fine, thank you.
So we're not debating anymore, no? 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 Okay. We'll now ask the leader to sum up. Oh, would you like to sum up? Okay, no? To do. Okay. Go on to the vote. Okay, we don't need to do that. Now moving on to item number 9. Yeah? Okay. Okay. I need to ask, do we all agree, please? Just to show of your hand, or? Agreed? Okay, is there anyone against then, please? Any abstained, please? So that's carried. Now we go to item 9, modern slavery and human trafficking statements. To receive the recommendation of Cabinet, they held on 23rd of June 2026, as previously circulated within the agenda. I now propose to call the minutes. If you wish to either question or oppose the minutes, please indicate by standing and calling or out either question or object once I have called the minutes. Can I also remind members that any items to which no objection is made will be deemed to have been approved. I call Cabinet Minutes 33, modern slavery and human trafficking statements. That looks like no one wants to talk today. That's good. Thank you. Right. As the minute is another question, no object, the recommendation have been approved, and we will move to the next item of business. Okay. So we're not doing this. Are we doing this? We're not doing this. This one. Item number 10. Adoption of the Minerals and Waste Plan to receive the recommendation of the Cabinet held on 23rd July 2026, as previously circulated within the agenda. I now propose to call the minutes. If you wish either to question or oppose the minutes, please indicate by standing or calling out either question or object. Once I have called the minutes, can I also remind members that any item which no objection is made will be deemed to have been approved. I call Cabinet Minutes 38. Okay? As the minute is neither question nor object, the recommendation have been approved, and we move to the next item of business. Which is, are we going on this one? Okay. And this rate probably be go home by 3 o'clock, isn't it? Oh, okay, all right. Right. Agenda item number 11, future personal plan. Notice of intention to commence local plan preparation to receive the recommendation of the Cabinet held 23rd July 2026, as previously circulated within the agenda. I now propose to call the minutes. If you wish to either question or oppose the minute, please indicate by standing, calling out question or object. Once I have called the minute, can I also remind members that any item to which no objection is made will be deemed to have been approved. I call Cabinet Minute 39. So, that's it. We are moving. It's all carried. No one's object, isn't it? So keep going. And we are on, yeah. 12. Ooh. Now moving on, agenda item 12, constitutional change to respond to the discharge of local planning authority functions regulation 2026 to receive the recommendation of Governance and Audit Standards Committee held on 25th of June 2026, as previously circulated. I now propose to call the minute. If you wish to either question or oppose the minute, please indicate by standing or calling out either question or object. Once I have called the minute, can I also remind members that any item to which no objection is made will be deemed to have been approved. I call Governance Audit Standard Committee Minute 2022. Sorry. No. But there is no objection. So the minute is neither question or object. Recommendation have been approved, and we will move to the next item of business, which is should be 13, isn't it? Which is this one. Yeah. Okay. So item 13, notice of motion. We have 6 notice of motion before us today. Although notice of motion D and F will be treated as abandoned as previously advised. As you were, all notice of motion on the agenda will automatically be dealt with this meeting if duly proposed and seconded. Is motion A, Town and Country Planning, proposed by Councillor Hugh Mason and seconded by Councillor Susie Horton. Okay. I call Councillor Mason to confirm, if I can find you somewhere. That's it.
Happy to second, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. So this one's it. Now I call upon the Councillor Mason to present and speak to this motion. Okay.
Lord Mayor, planning committees. This motion was written some months ago, and events have caught up with it. The changes to planning committee operation were approved by the House of Commons last Wednesday. This does not alter our concern, but will require a drafting amendment to this motion, which will be proposed by one of my colleagues. I wish also to caveat the remarks which I am making about planning committee regulations, with the observation that our Chief Planning Officer is seeking to implement the new regulations in the most open and inclusive way which is possible, and I think this needs to be acknowledged. However, on the government website, you will find the plain English guide to the planning system. It states clearly at paragraph 8, quote, "Local people should take the lead in shaping their neighbourhoods, and elected councillors have a key leadership role in this process." And further on at paragraph 11, local planning authorities appoint planning officers to assist with the operation of the planning system. These are the principles which have been integral to the planning system from the earliest legislation at the beginning of the last century until last Wednesday. The regulations, which are due to come into operation on the 31st of October, overturn these principles. The vast majority of applications, probably over 90% of them, will be required to be determined by planning officers. These will include all householder applications and all except the largest commercial and residential applications. Although the more major applications in Schedule 2 may, quote, with the agreement of the nominated planning officer, be delegated to a planning committee, the default position, or as it is called, the overriding assumption, will be that these decisions will also be made by planning officers. In effect, therefore, de facto, the officers become the local planning authority. I have heard two reasons put forward to support this change. The first is that it will provide uniformity of practice across all local authorities. Given the wide diversity of environments and local situations across this country, I remain to be convinced that this is desirable. But even if it is, it surely need not require the overturning of long-established principles and procedures. The second reason given is that local councillors lack sufficient training and knowledge of planning law and practice. This reason is akin to the tendentious argument for doing away with jury trials because jurors lack legal education and training. From my own experience of this council, I consider that members of council committees are well able to come to balanced judgments when the facts and the legal constraints are set out before them. Most worrying of all in these changes is the fact that elected councillors will henceforth not be able to request that Schedule 1, that is over 90%, Schedule 1 applications be brought before a committee to be determined in a public forum. despite the fact that they may have attracted extensive public interest and concern. All Schedule 1 applications must, and this is the wording, must be determined by the officers. This will inevitably reduce public confidence in the planning process and also in the effectiveness of local councillors. My Lord Mayor, I am not naive enough to believe it likely that we can prevent or reverse these changes. But these changes are of such constitutional significance and practical importance that we should make a clear and unequivocal statement of this Council's position. Please support the motion.
Are there any amendment to this motion?
I formally propose the drafting amendment that Councillor Mason has just mentioned. And I'll happily speak to it if necessary. Yeah.
It needs some ice in there. Some ice, that's it.
You broke. We'll come back to semaphore.
Well, it's
if you
too
want.
old, you know, we need a new one.
His first meeting, mate.
I know,
mean,
we
come
need a
on.
newer one, digital one. Thank you, Councillor. So, has the amendment been circulated?
No.
Has it been seconded yet? No? Okay, Mr. Cavendish is there. So
Lord Mayor, I'm happy to second this motion, this amendment, and reserve my right to speak.
Would you like to wait or for it to be circulated, or shall we start?
We'll crack on. It's getting
Okay,
hot.
we'll crack on then.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. As Councillor Mason has said, this is a drafting amendment because, frankly, the regulations have now been passed. They were passed the day after, I believe, Councillor Mason, the deadline for the motion, so we are reflecting the situation. But as Councillor Mason has outlined, trust is very important in local government, indeed in any form of the public sector. And for vast swathes of our city, the planning system is the main way in which people engage with this council. It's that or getting your bins collected for vast swathes of the city. And so what they want to know is that are people's concerns being taken seriously? Are people that they can sack taking decisions where possible, rather than hide behind, as they see it, hide behind other people doing the work for them? That's one of the reasons why under Councillor Vernon Jackson we expanded the number of applications that could be decided at a planning committee, because we knew that in those issues it was a matter of trust and it was the best possible balance to actually make sure that public could trust the planning system. Has it been popular with people? No. Has it been popular with residents? Yes. Have they always liked the outcome? No. As Councillor Mason has outlined, the committee has often taken what they call fair and balanced judgments, often under the sword of Damocles from the planning inspector. But nonetheless, the key principle stays, which is that people our residents can sack, namely us, can take a whole raft of planning decisions. So to suddenly find that actually no, we're not, doesn't exactly help create and generate the sort of trust that's needed, particularly as we're going forwards into the biggest change in local government in decades, in a way that this city hates. And so the key thing is to try and create as much trust as possible as we go forwards. This motion tries to do that. It tries to say, look, this is completely the wrong way forwards, and we want people to help us make sure that our residents continue to have trust in our planning system. They don't necessarily believe that planning officers always will do that. And that's not down to any weakness on the part of the officers. It's just down to a deep mistrust that people feel that they're not in control. And so by putting forward this motion today, and also by putting forward this amendment to reflect the legal practice, what we're trying to do is to say to those many, many people who've engaged with all 42 of us at some stage that actually you count, Your concerns count, and we want to try and maximise the chances of it continuing. I go to the last paragraph, which is that the Leader of the Council writes to a minister. It may be a different one next week, we don't know, but the key issue remains the same, which is that we're really concerned about the impact that this has on local government, and we also want both our MPs, who will remain the same after the changes that will come with Prime Minister Andy Burnham, to actually stand up for our residents, stand up for this city, and actually try and fight those changes, because we need to make sure as we go forwards that we have as many people as possible with us. That means engendering trust, and one of the ways we can do that is to make sure that people they can sack take as many decisions on planning as possible. That's the reason why we've put forward the motion and the reason why we've drafted the amendment. Thank you, my Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Senators. And I go to Susie.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. I try my best to save my deputations for subjects that I'm really interested and passionate in, but today I find myself talking about planning reform. Thanks to Councillor Mason and Sanders for summarising the, outlining all the challenges that we're facing. So I won't rehearse all of those, but I will expand on a couple of points that Councillor Sanders said. So I've been on the planning committee now on and off for over 11 years, and have always approached it with respectful adherence to the legislation that we're working with. And like many people in this room, I've had challenging conversations with residents, explaining to them that it's not the council who is allowing or stopping said development, but national policy guidance sitting alongside our local plan. And I've emphasised that for us to do our role diligently and professionally, we need to stick to relevant and material planning considerations in our decision making, and avoid making decisions that could bring reputational and financial penalties on the council if overturned at appeal. We've all had those conversations with residents. But planning is not an exact science. And whilst evidence is relevant and policies provide structure within that framework, there's frequently an element of judgment that is relevant on a case-by-case basis. I like to refer to it as bringing the human into the planning process. It's not a huge space to debate in, but it is a really meaningful one. The most frustrating aspect of the process for us on the planning committee is frequently that we're all trying to prove a negative before it's actually happened. For example, said development will have an impact on amenity or will disrupt and damage a street scene. And that is the purpose of the committee, in my opinion. But councillors on the planning committee do bring a high level of local knowledge and scrutiny, and it makes a genuine and meaningful impact on the quality of the debate and decision making. That's why individual councillors request that applications go to committee rather than happens with the majority are decided by delegation by the officers, which is going to be significantly reduced. But so what do councillors bring whilst working within that legislative framework? We are trained as councillors to represent residents in the city. And whilst when we're on the committee we're working to a different framework, we primarily try and do what we always do, which is to see things from the perspective of the resident, whether that's the applicant or whether that's the objector. That public scrutiny and open decision making is so important in a democracy, even if the outcome upsets some and is misunderstood by others. And then, of course, it also, by having an open planning committee, it allows non-committee members, councillors, to come and do deputations and support their residents, which is further scrutiny. I think this is actually going to be shocking for residents, which is why we wanted to bring it to full council. It's been talked about and it's kind of, the word has got out there. But when we say to residents, no, we won't be able to do this in the future, I genuinely think they're going to be shocked at how many decisions will now not be eligible to go to that committee under this new legislation and reform. Now, I've managed to get this far before mentioning our beloved HMOs and the perception that there has sometimes been a politicisation of the planning committee to campaign on this issue. But actually, anyone who's been on planning committee since I've been in the chair will know how strongly I feel that we need to find relevant material planning considerations in any decisions, and I can think of many, many applications, especially with HMOs, when we have scrutinised the details and made proposals for either granting or refusing planning permission after good debate. And if anyone wants to, if you're having trouble sleeping, look at the last couple of planning meetings and you will actually see that there's been robust debate. It's been informed by an interrogation of the facts, local knowledge, a respect for the planning legislation, which is we're completely capable of removing that from our personal opinion about something. So, I don't want to go any more down that thing, but I just want to say that these proposals will remove that transparency and debate from public decision-making and push it to become a behind closed doors decision-making by officers without debate and perhaps by people who've never even walked those streets. So together with local government reorganisation, it really does feel as if our grip on our role in doing what's best for our residents in our city is being diluted with every month that goes by, and that is a real shame, Lord Mayor.
Lee Hunt, please. You did put your hands up, didn't you? Yeah. Oh, okay.
Lord Mayor, what I want to say is I'm pretty sure that later on we'll hear Councillor Heaney stand up and say, oh, well, this should all be sorted out in the city local plan. And therefore, there's no reason for anybody to be worried about what we do in future because officers will be making their decisions based on the city local plan, which is true. Excuse me. But it's also the scrutiny of of the decision-making that goes with it. Here we are, the government, the Labour government, telling us that we need to, they want to push decision-making down to the local level. And here we are, it's just a very straightforward example of Labour ministers taking away decision-making from local residents and local councillors and passing them on to unelected local government officers sat in front of computer screens behind closed doors. Now, all those people in Wadham Road and in Hillsea that Councillor Simpson there and Councillor Villelli worries about in her area, you know, these residents want to be able to come to their local councillor and say, please can you call in, Lord Mayor, please can you call in this planning application in our area, which has raised 50 or 60 or 20 or a dozen objections. But Lord Mayor, these Labour ministers, I'm pretty certain the Labour councillors are fed up with it too, because they know it's costing them a lot. I'm pretty certain that they're fed up with these Labour ministers making these ridiculous decisions. But that's the trouble with the Labour Party. It's the difference between us and the Labour Party is that the Labour Party believes in policy, whereas we believe, the Liberal Democrats, we see the person. And I think this is very important when it comes to decision making. I mean, you see, for example, this constant deregulation of planning and licensing across the city and across the country. And we hear complaints, for example, from the MP for Portsmouth North going on about vape shops. But the reason there are so many blinking vape shops doing all sorts of weird and wonderful things is because successive governments, and indeed the Conservative government, deregulated planning. And what that means is they took away from the local authority, the local planning authority, the ability to say maybe there should only be 35% of hot food takeaways in a street. Maybe there should only be 10% of another one in a street. But the deregulation has meant that within those retail use classes, you can open up all manner of things. Now, this is a consequence of ministers, both Labour and I think in the coalition too, of people deciding that they want to see a free market economy, you know, this 24/7 economy. Well, we councillors, we see the effects of that when people complain to us about what's going on locally. And do you know what? Because of this diabolical decision, all of us, all of you, whether or not we're in a bigger local authority or not, we're going to have less say over these things. The accountability is not going to be there. You can't vote a local government officer out, but you can vote your local councillor out if he or she does something that you don't agree with. So it's less accountability, there's less scrutiny. Residents really actually do know this. When you talk to them about it, they're really quite cross about it, and I'm sorry to say to our Labour colleagues, it's one of the reasons why they got an absolute kicking at the recent local elections. And I'm certain it's going to happen again. They're going to get absolutely wiped out at this rate. There'll be nothing left of them locally at all. They will be insignificant because the ministers on their behalf, it's their party, are making all these weird and wonderful decisions. And they are taking away from residents in particular the right to have their say. And that, Lord Mayor, is completely wrong. So I very much support the amendment and very much support the notice of motion today. And I'm sure, I encourage the Labour members to vote for it too, because if you don't, we will be telling people what you said. Obviously, that's how it goes. So I would urge Labour members to support the notice of motion and get onto their MPs and their ministers and tell them to stop buggering us around in Portsmouth.
Thank you, Mr. Hunt. Now I have Simon Bushra to speak, if I may.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. Councillor Hunt made reference to wanting to hear from Councillor Heaney, but I can see the screen from here. There's not a single light by any of the Labour members whatsoever.
He will after you've gone now.
He probably will, and we'll probably get a history lesson going back to Matthew Wellington's time in the 18th century.
Just agree with me again.
Not entirely. I would never do that. Lord Mayor, is it somewhat ironic and fortuitous timing that my father received a planning application letter for a house for the property directly opposite him? Now, my father lives on his own. He's 91 years old and he's in a wheelchair, and we struggle to read his WhatsApp messages. But it says, the above planning application has been received by the City Council. You're advised to familiar yourself with the plans to ensure that you understand what is being proposed. You can go online and you can have a look at it, etc., etc., etc. Your views must be received by the 4th of August in this case, and then goes on to say the ward councillors for the site are listed below as follows. That's myself, and that's Hannah, and that's Spencer. Now, let's roll this forward 6 months. He wouldn't get this letter. He will be absolutely none the wiser until they start building a bungalow in the back garden of the house directly opposite him, which is what this is actually proposing. So, notwithstanding the fact that, all right, my father is related to me, so he gave this to me, but how many other 91-year-olds potentially are there in Drayton and Farlington that are going to be none the wiser until something actually happens, Councillor Heaney? Perhaps you can explain that one to me. But I sort of looked at this notice of motion and I thought, OK, I don't put an awful lot of stuff into the planning committee. I don't tend to do that if I can get away with it. But I look back at some of the ones that I have put into the planning committee to give representation over the years to see how that would actually be treated. Now, there's a road up in the ward, in my ward, it's called Down End, it's right up on the top of the hill, big houses at the top, and they've all got detached garages that sit to the front of the property, quite a lot of them there. There was a resident there that had a garage, flat roof garage, it was falling to pieces. He knocked it down and he rebuilt one with a pitched roof to reflect the pitching in the house behind it. What he didn't do was put in a planning application, so that's where the resident was at fault in that respect. But eventually he did, because that's what he was advised to do, and it went to officers' delegation and they recommended refusal, even though it was built, and it was on the same footprint. Now, I got it called in to the planning committee, and there might be some members that probably were around at the time, because what had happened, again, along the frontage of these houses, 2 or 3 of them had high privet hedges, And the officer report that went forward had taken photographs from one end of the street saying it's out of keeping with the road to have this garage on the front of the property. And they took it along the hedge line from one direction that showed no garages. When they stood at the other end, there were 10 similar ones. So we had what was effectively a misleading report from an officer of the City Council that went to the Planning Committee to make them go in a certain direction. We are now taking that situation that, with respect, that decision could be taken by one officer and, let's say, Councillor Horton as the chairman of the Planning Committee. Now, with respect to Susie, I know she stood in Drayton and Farlington once in the past, but is her knowledge of Drayton and Farlington as familiar as it is with Central Southsea? I would suggest not. And I would not want to be in a position where we have one councillor from, let's say, the south of the city, because that's where the current chair actually sits, making decisions unilaterally on planning applications in Drayton and Farlington, as I suspect Paulsgrove wouldn't, or Cossam wouldn't, or anybody else. And it also would put that chairman of the planning committee in that invidious situation of being almost a cabinet member for the planning committee, but the crucial bit is without opposition spokesman, because that's where we're actually going with this. There will be a couple of comments, Lord Mayor, about representing their constituents. Well, I can't represent my constituents, and as Councillor Hunt quite happily pointed out, somebody comes to me about a planning application they suddenly find out about, they're going to come to the ward councillors for help. We are their voice. We are their elected representation that, even though we may not necessarily know planning law as such, we know how to get it into the council so the decision is made. Whether they like the decision or whether they don't like the decision, it should not be about the process that they've actually had to go through. And I would urge all members to support the notice of motion and its amendment, and I hope that the Labour members do too.
Thank you, Councillor. So now I have Joe Sunsden to speak, please.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. Although I'm still relatively new here, planning is by far the biggest thing that I've dealt with since becoming an elected member. And without question, the most emails and letters I've received since being elected have been with regards to planning applications and objections to planning applications. Now, in Portsmouth, I feel that our planning committee is very, very good. We don't always agree on everything, but that is the beauty of democracy. We don't have to. It's chaired brilliantly by Councillor Horton, and we all put across what we want to say, and it's a really well done committee. Now, I genuinely believe that this legislation is taking away the right of the people to have a say. As Councillor Bosher said, what we've got to remember is we are elected into this chamber to be the voice of the public. And this legislation is taking it away. And that is why I believe, and as Councillor Mason put so well in the paper, this is a complete and utter affront to democracy. And that is why I'll be supporting this motion and the amendment 100% today, and I hope everyone else does too.
Thank you. So now I have Russell Simpson, Councillor.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I've been waiting in the wrong seat, it seems. Yeah, I welcome this motion and the amendment and the continuation. You know, July, near enough exactly a year last year, I brought forward with Councillor Madrick a lawful development certificate and amendment from Councillor Mason. Did we get a reply from Secretary of State? No. Then we followed up again. Councillor Spencer brought a motion forward, which I seconded. Did the Secretary of State write back to us? No. Did the Labour group support that motion? No. So we're back here. We're essentially ignored, not assured, but ignored by the government and not even supported by our local Labour councillors, which I think is really disappointing, to say the least. I mean, this takes away not only our voice, which we've been elected to do, but it also takes away the residents' voices, which they come in here and read deputations against an array of things. And actually, it goes against the Article 4 direction as well. you know, it's around conservation areas elements as well as HMOs. You know I was going to mention it. But I think the point is that where I was really surprised is I saw a landlord and a developer in Hillsey, because they're always there, and I said to them, I bet you're really happy about this. And they said, actually, we're not, because we're going to get rogue landlords, rogue developers, who essentially will now have their planning application approved, and they will be painted with the same brush. So I was actually quite surprised by that, but that's how they feel about it. I think they know there are some bad applications. So I hope everyone supports this, and I really hope the Labour group support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. So now have Councillor Heaney.
Thank you for that reception. I think Councillor's been looking at my notes as well. I don't know how you managed to do that. Well, I'm going to say something about plan policy and plan process. Now, I haven't sat on planning committee for a really long time. I did it when I was in my first term, but work commitments mean I can't commit myself regularly to doing that, so I didn't want to put a position where I couldn't actually carry out my responsibilities. But I have dealt with planning applications from residents. I'll talk about that in a moment. Just talk about plan policy. I mean, Councillor is quite right. We have a local plan. We have a very extensive process of consultation on how the local plan should be developed and how it should be implemented. We've been through months and months of that, and we're just about to start the process again. It sounds like a never-ending cycle. You know, you start a plan, you finish it, and you've got to start another one again. But that's an important part of how we decide on where things should go and how development should happen. The other important thing, of course, is plan policy, our own plan policy. Development of plan policy is really key because that gives us the ammunition to both agree with and also to disagree with planning applications. If we have a strong policy, we can deal with applications that we don't think are suitable. I am told that we have one of the strongest HMO policies of any local authority in the country, and I'm very grateful for Councillor Hunt's endorsement at that point. So we have a really good, strong ability to deal with that issue which affects residents. The other thing I think we remember, and I shall include my little history lesson for Councillor Bosch's point, back in the 1980s, the Conservative government made it a presumption that development should be allowed. The planning system was to allow development. The presumption was you would allow development, and that was a change in philosophy from previous governments. So the presumption is we must allow development unless there are very good reasons to refuse it. Now, when I talk to residents about planning applications, very often they'll come up with a whole series of reasons, but I always insist that the reasons they are going to be most effective are the ones that are based on planning principles and planning grounds. There are often lots of other reasons why they don't like a development, but I'm saying if you put that argument, it's not going to work. It won't affect the planning process or the planning system because it's not the right sort of argument. So we have to be honest with our residents and tell them what we think is going to be most effective when we're being their advocates. In terms of what this proposal from government does, there is a certain amount of over-exaggeration. I don't see anything in this proposal that removes notifications to residents about planning applications. There is nothing in that, and for Councillor Bosher to suggest that residents won't be notified, I think is wrong. That isn't the case. The second thing I wanted to say is was wrong. I questioned whether it would actually be got. The point that I was making is that the letter referred to the 3 ward councillors as being the person that you'd have to go to. That is not going to be the case going forward because we no longer have that ability to actually represent our residents. And it'd be interesting to hear from Councillor Heaney what he intends to do about representing his residents on planning applications.
Well, I don't see why the local authority would not want to notify notify the fact that councillors can be asked about this, because even if it's a minor application, sometimes you will go and have discussions with council officers about it prior to its formal consideration, and sometimes it's very clear it's going to be delegated and decisions made, and there isn't a need for it to go to committee under any circumstances. So again, you know, there isn't necessarily going to be a removal of the council. I think there's an attempt to mislead here, and that was the point I was trying to make. The other point I think that I wanted to pick up from Councillor Hunt, he made the point about that the council should somehow be able to decide what's the right percentage of vape shops, restaurants, whatever, in a particular area.
that's an interesting idea, but why is the local authority, why are we the best people to make the decisions about how many restaurants or vape shops there should be? Because what you do is you create a premium. Once somebody's got a planning permission for a restaurant or vape shop, that's a premium. Because if the local authority won't then allow any others, you've got a premium. You've created a situation where someone has a really valuable asset. And it effectively stops competition because, you know, someone else can't come in who may actually do a better job than the existing ones. So I do think we have to be careful about thinking about those sorts of ideas. I understand why people say that, but you have
39B, Lord Mayor. Yeah, sorry, I didn't wish to interrupt you particularly, Graham. I think probably in the excitement of all of it, you probably misunderstood. Historic, I was talking about in the way that you were, I was talking about the history. This local authority used to be able to control the numbers of shops and so on, so we didn't see an explosion of too many of one thing. Unlike we're seeing nowadays, explosion of barbers, explosion of vape shops. That's because of deregulation, and it's an error, in my opinion, and most people are out there. Sorry to interrupt you, Councillor Heaney.
Thank you. Can you carry on?
I think that's just repeating the debating point, but never mind. But that's my point. 1980s, development should be allowed. That's the principle we work under. Now, in terms of this one, Schedule 1 applications, I mean, lots and lots of applications that we see going through the system are agreed by delegated powers. We see the list every week. Under the Schedule 2, there's a very interesting comment here. You can have an application referred to the planning committee if there are economic, social, environmental issues of significance to the local area, or where the application raises significant planning matter having regard to the development plan and any other material considerations. It also says it is for the nominated officer and member to assess whether the development proposal raises any such issue, providing an opportunity for local democratic oversight when necessary. It's not a decision of the nominated officer or member on the planning application. It's a decision that whether it should go to committee for consideration. Now, where an application raises economic, social, environmental issues is quite a broad definition. And I would hope that we would look to include as many opportunities for having applications go to the planning committee as possible under those things. And it's down to the nominated member and the officer to decide whether. There's nothing to stop an individual ward councillor approaching the nominated member and saying, I think this should go. They then have to make the decision. So I think there is a bit of scaremongering going on about some of this here. Yes, it will be a reduction in some of the applications, but I think there's plenty of wide discretion available if we are prepared to use it. And from what I heard from Councillor Mason, that is what the intention of the authority is. And if that is the case, then I would applaud it.
39B again, Lord Mayor. May I? Yes, it's a reference to me, and not me particularly, but scaremongering. The plain fact is, Lord Mayor, is that residents out there who can currently contact their ward councillors and ask them to call something in to be debated and given scrutiny will not be able to do so in future.
B.
39B.
Councillor Hunt does seem to continue to carry on the debate. It's not a point of information or point of order. He's just carrying on the debate and making another point which he's already made. And I think that is an abuse of standing order. So I would ask him not to do that in the future.
Right. Can we, ladies and gentlemen, please, can we please, we are going fine. We can go home on time for the football. So just let's carry on and do it. We heard. Thank you very much. Now I have Councillor Steve Pitts next, please.
Okay. So instead of loads of interruptions, I'll just say what everybody else has been trying to chip in. Graham, you should win an award. I mean, the government are able to do a certain amount of gerrymandering about honours, and I think you should definitely get one for your repeated attempts to gallantly defend utter nonsense being put out by the Labour government, and to do so in such a way that to suggest that loads of elected members haranguing the chair of the planning committee means that there's some form of democracy retained in the process is something that I find almost, I think, unfortunately laughable would be the phrase I would use. There is nothing good about these changes. Nothing whatsoever. And I'm going to use it's going to come across a very odd example, but I'll tell you why. I was at a planning committee once, I was sat on the committee, and somebody came along because the people in the property that backed onto their house were proposing to build an outbuilding at the bottom of their garden. And the visual impact of that was about 30, 40 centimetres above the back garden wall. Now, taken in abstract, that sounds like something you think, really? But to that resident who brought that objection and had her say at the committee, it was absolutely clear that to her, and in terms of the impact that was having on her mental health well-being and the well-being of her family, it was everything. It wasn't something to be dismissed by a minor, that's gone through, just let it go. That's not what this is about. This is about giving members of the public a fair and reasonable opportunity to challenge something that they genuinely believe will negatively impact their lives. Now, whether they're right or not in terms of material planning considerations is a matter for a planning committee that has been trained and understands the rules of engagement to decide. But to take away the voice of the resident from that fundamentally rubs up against everything that not just I or the Liberal Democrat group or any other councillor in this chamber should have concerns about, but anyone who enters elected office in a democratic state. Removing decision-making and making it farther away from the people that it impacts is bad policy. And this Act that's now gone through Parliament, as we've heard, is bad policy.
Thank you, Councillor. Now I have Councillor Crowley, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I agree with most of the points already made regarding democratic process and community engagement and the implications from these changes. So I won't dwell too much on those points that mostly have already been well made. I wanted to come at this from a slightly different perspective and try and understand what the logic behind these proposed reforms is. And I think if we had a government minister here, they would talk to us about increasing house building delivery, because there is a housing crisis in this country. We do need more homes, and specifically we do need more affordable homes that people can actually afford to live in. So that is a notable and worthwhile objective. But my question to them would be, is planning really the major problem that is holding up house building delivery in this country? I don't think it is. The problem is one of government house building policy. And for a start, I think there's been an over-reliance on the private sector building houses in this country. And look what they've delivered. Nowhere near what's needed, and specifically the wrong type of housing that's needed, in the wrong places, the wrong sizes, not family houses where people need it, tiny little rabbit hutches that they can maximise the profit out of, most likely in commuter towns from London where realistically people don't want to live. And also, building on that, there's many sites, many big sites across this country where planning permission exists and has existed for years, but they're not being built out. So if the problem was really one of planning, then why aren't those sites being built out? And the reason for that, again, comes back to profit and the role of the private sector in dominating the house building industry in this country. The big house builders, on a commercial scale, land bank sites, and they buy up the planning permissions. They stop anyone else from building there because they haven't got the rights to do so, but they won't build it out themselves until it's profitable to do so, which might be in 5 years, it might be in 10 years, it might be in 20 years further down the line. It might never get built out, but at least they've had that right to make the profit and stop anyone else using that land kind of in a socially beneficial way. And I think there's a local example we can look to where this is a good kind of contrast to what's happening right now. If you look at what's happening on the Vivid site in Tipner, those properties are being built out pretty quick. And I think this every time I go past. There's a new story in that building. There's a new story in that building. Am I just imagining this? So I went and looked at what the research says. And in 2025, there was a government report on house building which found out that housing associations and other non-for-profit housing delivery providers build out their sites twice as quickly as the for-profit providers, which to some people might not make sense, because surely you'd think these house builders want to build homes as quickly as possible to maximise their profits. But what they don't want to do is flood the market. If they've got a massive site and they deliver 1,000 homes in a year, that's going to depress the prices. It's much more profitably, that seems kind of counter to logic, but it's much more profitable for them to build 100 homes over 10 years each year. So what is the solution then? I think the solution is to retain, obviously, local control over planning, but whilst all at the same time investing in public ownership of lands and social housing grant availability, so that those non-profit providers who want to build homes in the right places, the types of homes that people need and can actually afford to live in, will be able to build those out. And if we look at Portsmouth, we've got 3 sites where that could happen very easily. The former Somers Town block site, City Centre North and Tipner West, on all of those sites there are viability issues of one way or another that at the moment is stopping the council from perhaps building as much affordable housing on those sites as it wants to. I know we've done all right with Somers Orchard, but there's still going to be several hundred private homes there. They could be social homes for local people at affordable rates. City Centre North currently plans for 30% affordable housing. Okay, 30% is great, but it could be 50%, could be 70% with greater government support. And Tipner West, I won't go into an MLD, I've discussed it enough in this chamber, but we know the same issues apply. So I think, yeah, the solution is government policy. I don't think the issue is too much local control over planning. I think the issue is governments not giving councils the power and the resources to build homes that people actually need and can afford to live in.
Thank you, Councillor. Now I have Councillor Bernard Jackson, please.
Lord Mayor, I'm very sorry. I have been put in a seat near Councillor Bosher, and so one of Councillor Bosher's favourite phrases, I'm sorry, is catching. This is not a debate I intended to speak on, but...
Actually said that.
Having chaired meetings here, I can... anyway, I think Councillor Corkery, in what he said, is absolutely right. There are big issues here, but there's also local issues. We know across the country there are 1 million houses and flats consented to be built by councils that the housing companies choose not to build. There's no lack of planning permissions. What we have is a lack of companies prepared to go and build this. And yet, with governments of all colours, they seem to believe, the property developers time and time again, that it's the councils that stop development, not them. And it just does not stack up. So we do have a real issue with land banking. I'll give you an example here in this city. Where the McCarthy Stone site is down by South Parade Pier was an empty site for many years. When an owner decided that they wanted to keep planning permission, because after 3 years, if you don't do anything, your planning permission lapses, what they asked was somebody from the council to go down to watch them commence development. Because once you've commenced development, that planning permission is live forever. And what they did was they went down and they dug a hole with a spade. And that meant their planning permission was live forever. Now, that's a real problem. So I think there is one of the things that government should have done, and unfortunately across all parties, it seems that they tend to believe property developers, not councils. It should be that if you're not going to build out your planning permission, that you forfeit it. If it's not done within a certain number of years, your planning permission is lost. And that would help free up land for people who actually want to do it. We've got a site in this city, in Tipner, where we as a council volunteered to build this out, to get social housing built, and the government said, no, private sector much better than you. We're not interested in you doing it. And now what's happened? Years later, it's still empty. And if we'd had it, it had been built out and people would have been able to live there. So there are other problems, that, and people in business are right. Brexit has had a big problem because prices for materials have shot up, and therefore costs are much higher. And number of people in the industry doing the work has gone down because people have left the country. Therefore, that's increased costs, and that's the problem. We just have to cope with that. But then again, with these reforms, the big problem I see is that planning is done by consent. The issues that come to the planning committee are the 5% which people really care about, and contact a councillor and ask for it to be called in or start a petition, and then they come. And they may not get the answer they like at the planning committee, but they have been heard. They have had their chance to say, and when people leave this building, even if they haven't had the decision they like, they are pleased that people are being prepared to listen to them and come up to it with a decision. And if government are stopping that, which is what they are doing, and Councillor Hunt is not right, I'm terribly sorry to say, because people will still get letters to say, contact your councillor, and what we'll have to say is, I'm sorry, there is nothing we can do. You might be on the bottom of a letter saying, contact Councillor Bosher, and all Councillor Bosher can say, I can do nothing because this Labour government have removed my ability to have any influence over that. So that is a real problem. So I'm going to give you a small example that came to the planning committee when I was chairing it. In Sussex Road, there was an application in a conservation area to demolish an old building. And lots of local people upset, but the council's conservation officer said yes, that was okay to knock down this piece of our history. The planning committee decided no, that it should be preserved. It's in a conservation area. That's the point of it. The people who applied went to appeal, citing the council's conservation officer of having good reason to pull this down. The planning inspector, the government's planning inspector, decided the planning committee were right and the council's conservation officer was wrong. This change will mean that that can no longer happen. That safeguard to local people is being removed, and therefore when I talk to people in the property industry, they think this is a really bad thing the government is doing because people won't believe that their voice can ever be heard, and therefore planning by consent is out of the window. It is a really stupid thing this government is doing, and it will come back to bite people because every single planning decision that people don't like, it's no longer our fault, it's Stephen Morgan's and Amanda Martin's fault. Every single thing is their fault because they didn't vote to stop this in Parliament. So, my Lord Mayor, I do hope that we unanimously support this motion and that we can send a message to government to say this is entirely unacceptable, not good for local people, but it's also not good for the property developers as well. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. I don't see anyone else who wishes to speak, so can I ask Councillor Mason to sum up? First, we need to see, are you taking the amendment?
I certainly accept it is a very sensible amendment. I think I wrote it. But that's it's interesting the way in which a debate goes. This debate has gone much wider than I thought it would. It has highlighted a number of the weaknesses in the way in which we build houses and we develop this country. Councillor Corkery and Councillor Vernon Jackson are both right that there are problems which certainly the current legislation does not address. But coming to the current legislation, yes, Councillor Heaney is right. We do have national and local policies, and they are strong policies. Certainly our local ones are. But policies are not written in stone. Policies are guidance. Policies often conflict with local needs, genuine local needs. That is why we need local knowledge. This has been made time and time again in this debate. We need the local input, and not just in those big decisions where the planning officer and the chair of the planning committee come to an agreement that it should go forward to a planning committee, because if they don't come to agreement, it doesn't, but also on some things which are apparently, at first sight, quite small, or at least they would be small if you didn't have local knowledge. And Councillor Bosher is right on this. You need local knowledge. You need to input into any decision making, that local input, that local understanding. The case which Councillor Vernon Jackson highlighted of Sussex Road. I remember it well. Oh yes, I remember it. But it is a very good example of where what would be in abstract good planning, for someone who just knew the whole of the city, good planning, but for someone who knew the particular local environment of Sussex Road, it was not good planning. And that is why we need to have local ability for councillors to raise matters and have the matters discussed in public, in a public forum, where if a large number of local residents make an objection or are worried about something, they have the right to have that heard in a public forum, however big or however small it may be, to the planners sitting in the planning office. They need to have their input. Because if they don't, trust is broken. And I come to the core point which Councillor Sanders made. Trust is important. People must trust their council. They must trust their councillors. And this removes one of the options for trust. So, thank you for the debate. I trust you will support the motion as amended.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. So as we have no one else wish to speak, and you find it, now we're going to, for these, yeah.
Can I ask for may I ask for a recorded vote, please?
We need 8 people standing, please. Yeah. Please take a seat. So now we're going to do recorded votes. So,
thank you, my Lord Mayor. In the usual manner, can I please ask members who wish to support this notice of motion, complete with a subsumed amendment, to stand and take your seat once I've called your name. Councillor Ghosh, Councillor Corkery, Councillor Andrews, Councillor Jeffrey, Councillor Oliver, Councillor Kate Dorrington, Councillor Adair, Councillor Winnington, Councillor Brent, Councillor Atwell, Councillor Ansell, Councillor Brown, Councillor Ashmore, Councillor Hunt, Councillor Nick Dorrington, Councillor Perry, Councillor Vernon Jackson, Councillor Gardner, Councillor Barrett, Councillor Hunt, sorry, don't Councillor Hunt, Councillor Mason, Councillor Pitt, Councillor Sanders, Councillor Candlish, Councillor Horton, Councillor Bosher, Councillor Madgwick, Councillor Simpson, Councillor Fudge, Councillor Standen, Councillor Strudwick, Councillor Tyndall, Councillor Inman, Councillor Coupland, Councillor Dent and Councillor Dyke. Can those who wish to vote against please stand and take your seat once I say your name? That is none, my Lord Mayor. And those who wish to abstain? Councillor Heaney, Councillor Vallely, Lord Mayor.
So it's, I used to abstain, sorry. Right, 35 in favour, 0 against, 3 abstain. So the motion goes forward. We know how to count. All becoming a bit of a fun, isn't it, now? That's good. I like this light-hearted approach to all this. Are we going to B, aren't we? Is motion B, military families and the high-income child benefits charge, proposed by Councillor Leonie Olivier and seconded by Councillor Steve Pearce. Now I call on the proposer, Leonie Olivier, to... Oh, hang on, where are you?
I'm here and reserve my right to speak, Lord Mayor.
Happy to second, Lord Mayor, and reserve my right to speak.
Right. Where are you?
Thank you, Council, Lord Mayor. I rise today to present this motion on behalf of the many military families in Portsmouth who are being unfairly impacted by the high income child benefit charge. This is not simply a matter of tax policy, it is a matter of fairness. It is about recognising the realities of military family life and ensuring that those who support our armed forces are not financially disadvantaged because of that service. Like many families in our city, my own family serves this country through the Royal Navy. Last year, my husband was deployed for 9 months out of the 12. During that time, I was effectively a single parent, managing childcare, school runs, illnesses, holidays, parents' evenings, hobbies, dance club, gymnastics, and every other responsibility that comes with raising a family while a loved one is serving overseas. Like thousands of military spouses across the country, I had to put my own career second. My ability to work full-time is restricted by the realities of service life, where deployments, unpredictable schedules, and frequent absences make securing and maintaining flexible employment incredibly difficult. This is not a choice, it is a consequence of supporting someone who serves our country. During that deployment, my husband received additional sea pay and a retention bonus. Those payments rightly recognise the sacrifices made by those serving at sea for extended periods and were taxed accordingly. However, they also pushed this adjusted income above the child benefit threshold. I've lost my space, hold on. This result was that our family lost child benefit and was subsequently required to repay some of it through the high income child benefit charge. That experience left us asking a simple question: how can this be fair? A household with a single earner who receives additional pay because they have spent months away from their family serving the nation can lose child benefit altogether, while another household with 2 significantly higher earners can continue to receive full benefit simply because neither individual crosses that threshold. That is not a reflection of need, it is not a reflection of household income, and it is certainly not consistent with the spirit of fairness that families expect from our public institutions. This motion is not about asking for special treatment for armed forces families. Military families understand service, sacrifice and duty better than most. We are simply asking that families are not penalised because service-related payments, retentions, incentives or operation allowances temporarily increase one person's income. Portsmouth is uniquely placed to speak on this issue. We are one of the country's proudest naval cities. We rightly celebrate our armed forces at every opportunity. We applaud our servicemen and women for the sacrifices they make, but we must also remember that those sacrifices are shared by husbands, wives, partners, children and families at home. The Armed Forces Covenant makes a clear promise that those who serve and their families should face no disadvantage arising from that service. Yet in a case like this, that promise does not feel like a reality. This issue affects real families, families who already cope with long separations, uncertainty, disrupted careers and the emotional strain that military life inevitably brings. It should not be compounded by a tax system that unintentionally penalises them for the very service our nation depends upon. Recognising the wider importance of this issue, I have also written to our local MP Amanda Martin, who has publicly spoken about her support for armed forces personnel and their families. I asked her to raise this matter in the House of Commons so that it could receive the national attention it deserves. Unfortunately, despite her acknowledgement of the challenges and unfairness, she states that there are no plans for it to be changed. That is disappointing because military families deserve to have their voices heard at every level of government. Today's motion gives Portsmouth City Council the opportunity to do exactly that. Supporting this motion will not change national legislation overnight, but it will send a powerful message that Portsmouth stands behind its military community, that we recognise the unintended consequence of the current system, and that we are prepared to call on government to address them. I therefore hope I therefore hope that members from every political group will support this motion, not because it is political, but because it is fair, because it reflects the values of our city, and because the families who stand behind those who serve our country deserve nothing less. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any amendment? I think so, isn't it? No? No? Okay. So now the matter is before you all to debate, so floor is all yours.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. And thanks to the Leonie and Steve for bringing this motion. This is one of these motions where you get the unintended consequences of things that haven't really been thought through very well. The use of means testing for anything, for those of you who've been around for a long time, as an ex-Department for Work and Pensions employee, I don't really like. And I've never really liked the means testing of child benefit as much as anything. It's just to save a bit of money for the Treasury. But what it also does, it creates complexity. And this is exactly one of those positions whereby that complexity really makes a lot of difference to people. Because as in the motion, we're not talking here about day-to-day salary. We're talking about extra payments for people in the military that are things like for extra long deployments, for extra duties, for other things that they do while they're on service, but they're not base salary. So that's a really important point here that is in the motion. So this is something whereby you might be eligible for child benefits if you're getting just your base salary or your normal duties, but as soon as you do something extra, you end up losing it. But then you end up getting it back because they have to assess you again, which of course costs money. And this is one of the things about means testing, is means testing costs money. Never forget that. So no matter whether it's something when we're looking at social care, generally locally, or whether we're looking at some stuff like this nationally, this costs money. So it never saves quite as much as you think it does. And then the other point about this, of course, is it's not unprecedented to have discretion, payments that you disregard. So there are lots of things in benefits that you can disregard, and lots of different circumstances where payments are disregarded. So, for example, if you are in receipt of universal credits, but you also get PIP, personal independence payments, personal independence payment is disregarded. It is regarded as a disregarded payment. And now, the fact is a benefit is neither here nor there, it is disregarded. There are also a small amount of things that you get from income, which is not to do with benefits, which are also disregarded. So it would be very simple for the government, indeed it would simplify things for the government, if they said to armed forces personnel, any additional payments you get, where indeed you are doing even more to serve your country, you are doing on longer deployments, you're taking up additional duties, you might be doing something like additional training, where you get paid because you're away for longer, you're away from your families for longer, etc., etc., it would be very easy to say those are disregarded payments. Indeed, I remember from my times when I was a decision maker in the Department for Work and Pensions that I would have a long list of things that I would not, that I wouldn't take into account, I would disregard if I was making a decision on benefits. So it is one of these perverse things, and I think it's a very individual circumstance. What we're saying to the government in this motion is saying, just be aware that if you're signed up, we're signed up to the Armed Forces Covenant locally, and let us not forget, this government, I'm sure the next government, which will start on Monday under Andy Burnham, will back this up as well, is that they've said they want the Armed Forces Covenant to be embedded across the public sector, including in central government as well, to effectively, for them to finally, which I think is about time in central government, they actually join the programme and actually say that everyone should be doing this. So they should be looking at the individual circumstance that people in the armed forces have that pretty much is a unique circumstance, because they are doing things and they're getting extra payments which are not forever, which are having an impact on their families that are at home. And as we know, particularly with the Navy, those deployments can be very long, sometimes very, very long. If you think of someone who maybe is on Arctic patrol, is based down in the Falklands, etc., that can be 9 months, a year. It can be even longer. It's a long time away. But even those shorter deployments can make a real impact. So, it's a simple motion. It asks for something very simple. It actually asks for something that once you've let them know you're a service family and you say this is disregarded income, they'll go, yep, we know that. We just don't need to do anything with it anymore. It's actually going to save them. It will save the government more money than it will actually cost. So, because this is only a small amount of people, because in the end of it, the armed forces are only a small proportion of all those people who are claiming child benefits. So I hope we can support this motion. I hope that message gets through to the government, and who knows, with someone else in the Treasury that might even listen for once. Thank you very much, my Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Councillor Onnington. Now I have Mr. Councillor Heaney.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I think Councillor Oliver has made a very eloquent and compelling case that she's made, and particularly in paragraphs 2 and paragraphs 4 about the way the housing benefit system operates and about the unfairness of tackling allowances which are actually not permanent pay. So I just wanted to indicate that Labour Group will be definitely supporting this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Heaney. Now I have Councillor Steve Pitts.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. A bit like Graham, I wanted to focus primarily on paragraph 2 of the notice of motion. The idea that if one goes above the threshold, even if the other one isn't, that the benefit can be lost when a dual income household earning actually more overall wouldn't lose the benefit, to me is not logical. And therefore, a simple change to the policy to make it based so that it was equitable and fair would resolve many of the issues. But so on the notice of motion before us, that was when Leonie first spoke to me about this, and she explained that bit. I just thought that was so fundamentally wrong. Obviously, it's also incredibly important that this benefit is lost while people are actually making a sacrifice, and that seems counterintuitive to me as well. So I do think this is something that I hope the whole council can support. We've been very lucky recently to have the National Armed Forces Covenant Conference in the city. Unfortunately, it was on the hottest day of the year and they were cancelling buses and trains all over the place. So I went to join them for a chat at lunchtime. They'd all gone because they had to flee away. But I spoke to Caroline Bell, who does such excellent work for us, working on the Covenant, and there were some excellent things coming out of the conference, some of which we're now beginning to be updated on and asked to take part in further conversations with. So I think this is also something we should raise through the Covenant process, because we have the era ministers in terms of Armed Forces Covenant, and it's something they've been talking about a lot. We've recently, of course, we debated it quite some months ago now, but since we debated it, we now have won the accreditation for an Op Valor Centre for our council and partners cluster in this area, led by the brilliant Veterans Outreach Support at the Royal Maritime Club, or Royal Maritime Hotel as it is now. And so there's so much great work going on, but it seems to me that one of the things we can also be is an advocacy organisation for when there are things that clearly seem to be unjust to be put right, and I think this is one of them.
Thank you, Councillors. Now I have Councillor Standard, please.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. I just wanted to jump in at the end here because, as a lot of you know, armed forces things perk my interest a lot, being a veteran myself. And I think what we've got to remember is Portsmouth being the home of the Royal Navy and having almost 20% of our population made up of either serving personnel, spouses and partners of serving personnel, and children of personnel, serving personnel. This motion is something that, although, again, it's going to be a letter to the government, and I'm sure it will take months, maybe even years to get a response, Portsmouth should be leading the way on things like this, 100%. And I just want to push more to the fact of, yes, it is the parents that receive this. However, this money is for the service children. And service children should not be punished for their mother or father going to war and risking their life and potentially making the ultimate sacrifice and never coming home just because they are rewarded for putting their life on the line for this country so we can sleep safe at night. So I will 100% support this motion, and I hope unanimously we do as a council.
Thank you. Oh, I see there's no one else to speak. Can I ask Leonie Oliver to sum up, please?
Thank you. Thank you to everybody for their comments as well. As we come to a decision on this motion, I ask members to look beyond the figures and see the families behind them. This is not about seeking preferential treatment or asking for exemptions. It is about ensuring that those who already make extraordinary sacrifices are not placed at a financial disadvantage because of the very nature of military service. Portsmouth is proud to call itself the home of the Royal Navy. We rightly honour those who serve our country, but our support cannot stop at words or ceremonial occasions. It must extend to the policies that affect the daily lives of service families. The high-income child benefit charge was never designed with the realities of military life in mind. Temporary deployment pay or retention bonuses should not leave the families worse off simply because one parent has answered the call to serve while the other has had to sacrifice career opportunities to keep family life together at home. Today we have the opportunity to send a clear, united message that Portsmouth recognises the contribution of our armed forces families, supports the principles of the Armed Forces Covenant, and believes they should face no disadvantage because of their service. I therefore ask colleagues from all sides of this chamber to support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Right. Are we? There's no. Yeah, can you show of a hand and support, please? Yeah. Yeah, that's unanimous. We are going through this one. Right. Motion C. Preserving Portsmouth Historic Title Place in the Local Government, proposed by Councillor Spencer Gardiner and seconded by Councillor Simon Bosher. Now I call upon the present proposer, Councillor Gardiner, too.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. I'm grateful.
Where are you, Simon? I always find it difficult to find you, Simon. You know. Where is Simon? I'm looking for Mr. Oh. We've done it, but it should be Simon. Where's Mr. Bush? Is it? Are you seconding it?
Formally seconded, Lord Mayor.
Thank you very much. Now I call on Councillor Spencer to speak.
I'm grateful. Thank you, Lord Mayor. Whatever our views on local government reorganisation, I hope we can agree on one thing, If Portsmouth is part of the new authority, Portsmouth must be in its name. The government's working title of South East Hampshire Council serves to erase this city from the map. I appreciate that some of the strongest opposition to retaining the Portsmouth name comes from Conservative colleagues in neighbouring areas. Good for them, they are fighting for their own local identities. This goes to highlight the fundamental flaw in LGR. We are trying to force together disparate places into a mega council that cannot even agree on a common identity or name. That being said, Portsmouth is the economic, cultural and historic anchor of the region. Our city is internationally recognised for its maritime heritage, naval significance and visitor economy. That brand benefits not just Portsmouth, but the wider area. Retaining the Portsmouth name is therefore not a matter of civic pride alone, it is the strongest economic proposition for the whole authority area. This motion does not seek to reopen the entire LGR debate. It simply reinforces the position already adopted by Cabinet, that the new authority must include Portsmouth in its title. Portsmouth's name has been recognised around the world for centuries. We should not be the council that allows it to disappear from the name of the authority that governs it. I'm grateful.
Thank you. Don't see any. There's no amendment. Oh, we haven't gone that far yet. I'm not done yet. I've not given the floor yet. So please. There's no amendment, is it? Yeah, I think we haven't given the. Sorry. Now I think we can start, Mr. Hunt.
Is he seconded, Lord Mayor? Has he been seconded? I beg your pardon. All right,
Yeah.
I was going to second it then. If he
I think
didn't
can I interrupt you for a second? I think next time, if anybody wants to say, could you please stand up and say it? Because that was the reason we could not see you, Mr. Stanbosha. Sorry, I did not interrupt you earlier, but I do expect certain standards in this chamber. Thank you.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think we all do. I mean, what's going on here is it seems to be that identities are being rubbed out by more policy. Like I said earlier on, the Labour Party loves policy. It doesn't see people. This is a problem. And Portsmouth is 250,000 people. And they want to be seen. But I think it was the leaders said earlier on, the two MPs here, two Labour MPs are saying diddly squat about Sorrel. They're just not getting involved. They're keeping clear of all of this. I have not heard one syllable, I think, from Stephen Morgan, who should really be reflecting what his constituents feel, because they put him there, they voted for him in vast numbers. And Amanda Martin in the north, who's only got, I think, a majority of what, 750 over reform, and yet she sat on her bum, not getting involved, sticking her head in the sand, same as Mr. Morgan, hoping this is all just going to disappear. Well, it is, it's only just started. And the name is really important. And it should, me, I would have gone for Greater Portsmouth, frankly, if I could do, because that's exactly what it will be. But I know that some of my colleagues over in Gosport will be yelling at the screen if they're watching it, and so they wouldn't like it over at Havant, because these places will have their own identities, don't they? And if there's anything that as local councils we know about, is that people like their own identity. And the political structures across the area form part of that character and identity. And so Portsmouth the name Portsmouth must be included in there somehow. And as I say, I'll go for Greater Portsmouth, but my colleagues have been twisting my arm saying we should be going for Portsmouth and South East Hampshire to try and get some kind of agreement across the area. But I mean, I've got to talk about this politically now, and I will. I have no idea why Labour is not listening. And I'm sure the Labour councillors here too agree with me, but they can't say so. I'm pretty certain of it. They saw colleagues recently lose their ward council seats in the north of the city and in the south of the city, and it will be repeated again in May 2027. I can guarantee there's no way back for Labour around here, because they have let Portsmouth down, having given them a massive mandate and once been running this great city. They're down to the three of you and 2 MPs, one on a wafer-thin majority. And yet you sit back and allow your government to shaft Portsmouth at every twist and turn. I have never seen the like of it in 30 years of being involved in local politics. That a government that just does not listen, that said it was coming in to change things, and we thought change things for the better, just keep changing things for the worse. And Andy Burnham is not going to be able to turn around this left-wing commissariat like you try to turn around a massive ship. It's just not going to happen in 2 or 3 years. And people are not going to forgive the Labour Party when the elections come along. Stephen Morgan is in jeopardy. Amanda Martin, I hope, is out of her seat because she's doing nothing whatsoever to stand up for Portsmouth, apart from running around a few vape shops and being the 4th councillor somewhere in Cosham. So that's where we are. It's complete madness. Labour have brought this all upon themselves. All the time that I've got breath to say so, I will keep saying this is just ridiculous. What they're doing to Portsmouth is shafting Portsmouth, and they don't seem to give a diddly squat. I could say worse, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hunt. Now I ask Councillor Bernard Jackson to speak.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. Like Councillor Pitt and Darren Sanders, I went off to the LGA conference last week, and it was a really interesting time to hear from people from around the country about how powerful Labour MPs are. The whole geography of what's going to happen in local government reorganisation in Cambridgeshire is being driven by one person, the MP for Peterborough. The whole geography of what is going to be done for local government reorganisation in Devon is being driven because of Plymouth. Boundaries are being redrawn because of the wish of individual members of the Labour Party. Now, we could have asked, and maybe we did ask, our MPs to make sure that we were removed from local government reorganisation and that Portsmouth could stay as its own. But they didn't listen. They chose not to intervene on our behalf. But if members of Parliament outside of Portsmouth in other areas can even get the maps redrawn because they want it, what are our MPs doing? If they cannot even get the name of Portsmouth retained as part of the title of the new council, what are they doing? Either they're not interested, or they are weak, or they're just so scared of government ministers they're not prepared to raise their voices. So either they're not good enough to do their jobs, or they might be able to do the jobs, but they're too scared to do their jobs, or they're not interested. This is a litmus test for our Labour MPs. Are they going to be able to make sure that they make a difference for this city? And they can do this. If other Labour MPs are having the whole geography of the new councils in their counties redrawn because of one individual saying so, and our MPs cannot get Portsmouth names retained, then our MPs have big, big questions to answer about whether they are skilled enough to do the job, the backbone to do the job, or they just can't be bothered to do the job.
Thank you, Councillor. Now I ask Councillor Simon Bosher to speak.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. I've got a feeling I'm going to be a Councillor Hunt Mark II on this particular one. I'm not necessarily going to agree with you, Councillor Hunt. I'd never admit to that in public on live stream anyway. Lord Mayor, if you actually look at two of the first three notices of motion here, with the exception of Councillor Oliver's one, notice of motion A and notice of motion C are pretty depressing notices of motion to actually have before us. Because one is effectively removing democracy and the other one is effectively removing Portsmouth from the map. It is somewhat of an irony, and I know Councillor Gerarda is not here, but she's actually proposing celebrating Portsmouth's centenary. The irony you couldn't make up with regards to this. Actually, for people that might have not noticed, just as Councillor Vernon Jackson stood up to speak, it turned quarter to the hour, so we had the Pompey Chimes playing. Do we get rid of the Pompey Chimes? Because I certainly don't want to do that sort of thing. And in answer to your question about weak and disinterested for our two Labour MPs, Councillor Vernon Jackson, most definitely the answer to that one is yes. But I would also add that it's more about getting jobs and photo opportunities, because certainly Amanda Martin has been all over Facebook recently bragging about how she's actually one of those people that proposed Andy Burnham. Is that me, can I have a job please, me, but pardon the expression, but bugger Portsmouth, because she doesn't do anything for the north of the city whatsoever, unless there is a photo opportunity in there. When it comes down to things like surgeries, and she's followed in Stephen Morgan, I say Councillor Morgan, he wasn't really much of a councillor when he was here anyway, but that's neither here nor there. But Stephen Morgan, with their pints with MPs, unless you are the same political persuasion and you have to go through their Eventbrite bit, they filter you out, so they don't get any dissenting voices anyway. Lord Mayor, this is about protecting Portsmouth's future, and I know that when it comes to the Conservative Party, we have got some awkward sods across the water and further up the A3, but at least that is democracy. As Councillor Pitt said, they're actually standing up for their local areas. Well, I'm standing up for mine. I'm standing up for the city that I was actually born in, and what I'm not going to accept is the Labour Party seeking to erase Portsmouth from the map. I'd really like to hear from Councillor Heaney as to what his views actually are on this. Should Portsmouth be a part of the new name? But after all, we're going down this route of LGR, something that nobody here, well, I say nobody, generally this side of the chamber doesn't want. Not many people in Hampshire actually want. It's something that is being foisted on us, and we're ending up with notice of motion like this on our order paper trying to protect the name Portsmouth. Quite frankly, I think it's scandalous, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillor Hugh-Mason.
My Lord Mayor, a cynic might ask, what's in a name? It's just a romantic attachment. In fact, it goes back to 1194 as a charter. No, it's just a romantic attachment. Let's come into the 21st century. What's a name got to do with the price of fish? And the answer is probably everything. I've been one of those rather lucky people. I've had a lucky life. I've moved around the world quite a lot. Talking to businessmen in New York, they knew of Portsmouth. Talking to an investor in South China about 12 years ago, he knew of Portsmouth. Talking to people in India, they know of Portsmouth. And certainly all the people in the village of Akai Kai in the middle of Uganda know of Portsmouth. Not that that is very important. But what is important is that this place has name recognition. Name recognition counts a lot if you're thinking of investing. You want to invest in a place you know something about, or you think you know something about. If you wanted to take a trip, you want to go to Britain, you want to go and see places that you've heard of, places which you know something about. Even perhaps if you're thinking of somewhere to move to in the south of England from the north of England, you want to go somewhere where you've heard of, you know something about it. Portsmouth has name recognition, and this is important for investment, for visiting, for relocation. If we merely become East Solent or South East Hampshire, who would care? Who would know? Who could find us on a map? Portsmouth, the name, has importance economically. We, as a council, are here to defend our city, not merely in terms of its reputation, not merely in terms of the things which go on here, but also in terms of its economy. If we are thinking of Portsmouth's economy, if we're thinking of inward investment, if we're thinking of people buying, selling, trading with a city in the UK, Portsmouth is one of those which is known. And so, my Lord Mayor, I think it would be a disaster to lose the name of Portsmouth. I don't know whether Greater Portsmouth or just an expanded city of Portsmouth would ever be able, in this day and age, to attract the government. But certainly we must press them at every opportunity to ensure that the name Portsmouth exists in the title of this place. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Now I ask Councillor Steve Pitts.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. It will come as a surprise to no one in here that I've become very tired of having to talk about things related to this particular issue because it is increasingly mad and I don't like mad, I like to do logical. And if you think, well, he's just using a bit of hyperbole to make a point. No, this is actually mad. The government asked us to very quickly respond to some questions and whack in indicative titles so they could identify which cluster that we were talking about. So we said, we'll call ours South East Hampshire for the time being and we'll tell you what the actual name is when you actually require us to answer that question. That's the way it went in. Same with South West Hampshire, which you might actually understand, since the new council that includes Southampton, Eastleigh and the Waterside is to be called South West Hampshire, but is not actually South West Hampshire. That's the actual nonsense we're dealing with here. The government has said, oh no, you can stick with those names, when one of them actually doesn't even describe where that place actually is. So if you were, as Councillor Mason suggested, in the wilds of Uganda or perhaps in India or China or anywhere else, and you gave somebody the heads up that the place you're from is in South West Hampshire, and somebody happened to know at least where the county of Hampshire were and they came to visit, they would end up in the New Forest. They would not end up in South West Hampshire Council. When is this government going to stop doing bonkers, stupid, ridiculous things and inflicting them on us and then telling us that we agreed to something that we did not agree to? They do it every other week and I'm absolutely sick to the back teeth of it. When I spoke to, and I'm not going to put this person completely on the spot, a leader of Southampton Council, there have been a number under my tenure and therefore I'm not identifying a specific one, and said, do you know, they even wrote back and said, well, if you wanted to stay on your own, you could have just said so. That person was absolutely appalled because they were in the same meeting as I was when they were told they couldn't stay on their own either. Well, the same civil servants who write back absolute dismissive nonsense. We didn't put our name on the submission to government on the business case. We deliberately didn't do it. I stood in front of you all in here and explained why my name wasn't going to be on there, why it would have an asterisk. Please look in your papers, members, look at this paragraph. When the government then published what their outcome was, option 1A, they put us down as a signatory and say we supported it. When we pointed that out to them, they didn't. Their response was tough. Tough. We're not changing it. Who are these people? Faceless bureaucrats sat in Westminster deciding the future of our lives, our residents' lives, and their children and their grandchildren's lives. This is important. And we're not getting importance or any sense of acknowledgement from this damn government about just how much this matters. It matters because we're going to lose most of our services that people care about. It matters because they want to just rub out our name and call us some random thing because it's easier for them. Not to us, it's not. This is our lives, this is our home. This city must always be called Portsmouth. It will not, under any circumstances, ever be called bloody South West Hampshire.
Thank you, Councillor Steve. Please, now I ask Councillor Heaney.
I think it's a case of follow that. Yes, exactly. We had a briefing a few weeks ago when the discussion about the name took place, and although not every single member was there was a sort of straw poll taken around members about whether we wanted to include Portsmouth, and nobody dissented. I mean, nobody thinks that not having Portsmouth as...
I'm sorry, I'm getting old and deaf. Graham, I can't hear you.
Oh.
Could you be a little louder?
Sorry?
Thank you.
I need to be shorter or whatever.
Right. Yes, could you please speak up a bit so that
I will need to.
Thank you.
Use my lecturing, projecting voice rather than my ordinary voice. As I said earlier, at the meeting we had, the briefing we had a few weeks ago, there was unanimity among the members, although not every single member was attending the briefing about keeping Portsmouth as the name of any new local authority. So there isn't, I think, any dissent in this room and this chamber about the importance of that. As I understand it, the local authorities have to suggest a name. I believe from the consultations that have taken place, the majority of local authorities involved in this want to see Portsmouth as part of the name. I understand no final decision has been made. I don't know exactly when the decision is going to be made, but the sooner the better, I think, on that basis. And if the majority of local authorities connected with the new council want to see Portsmouth, I don't see why we shouldn't have Portsmouth as the name. And you're going to interrupt.
Yes, just point of information, Lord Mayor. That we've been told that if we are in agreement, we can suggest a different name. We are not in agreement because Fareham do not concur. So the current information we have from government is that unless we can all agree that together, they'll make us stick with what we've got.
Do you want to carry on?
Okay, well, that wasn't clear, but that's now clear. Well, I think that just makes the point that we should be lobbying very hard for the inclusion of Portsmouth in the name. It does seem a bit silly to be having this argument, quite frankly, given that the majority of the local authority areas here are, and why does it have to be complete consistent? There will always be people who disagree. I know that the MP of Portsmouth North, Amanda Martin, has written to the Secretary of State. It's interesting that she actually, I think, has a personal preference for Councillor Hunt's proposal for Greater Portsmouth. But whether that, what impact that will have, I do not know. I mean, I have no problem with supporting the recommendations. This is what we've agreed consistently as a local authority, and I just have to say we just keep having to make our case.
Thank you, Councillor. Now, Councillor Matthew Whittington, please.
Thank you very much, my Lord Mayor. I'm going to do, we haven't had one of these apart from Graham, so I'm going to do a little bit of history lesson. So when I first mentioned when I used to work for the Department for Work and Pensions, and when I first joined the Department of Work and Pensions, we had regions, and we had interesting regions. So later on we were part of Hampshire Isle of Wight, but to start with, we were part of, guess what? This was the government departments, name the area, Portsmouth and South East Hampshire. Now look, the government, you've used Portsmouth and South East Hampshire as a name for this area, and actually slightly more than just the area that's been proposed for the new authority for the area, always having Portsmouth there. I don't think I've ever seen anything that has just been South East Hampshire when it's included the city of Portsmouth. So my question to the government is, what's your problem? And indeed, why do you care? Why do you care? Especially when they've said, when they were putting through these the proposals, they made a very specific point as to the reason why they went for option 1A as opposed to the option that was put forward by Hampshire County Council, etc., and the other ones, was because they said, because we want to centre it on the economic centres. So in our case, it's Portsmouth. In the Southampton, Eastleigh Waterside one, it's because it's based in Southampton, and of course in the north of the county, it's around Basingstoke and that area on the M3 corridor, and then of course Mid Hampshire, it's on Winchester, but that's just it's the bits left over. But they did actually mention Winchester as it's centred on that because it's in the middle. So they had that as like, well, so why wouldn't you say, well, of course it should be Portsmouth and South East Hampshire. Of course it should be Greater Southampton or Southampton and Waterside or whatever they want to call that one. Why wouldn't they just suggest that? Because it's in their gift to do so and say, oh yes, we recognise these were just placeholders. But it's not just a past thing that's used by an arm of government for our area. So our Hampshire Isle of Wight NHS Foundation Trust, so our main NHS provider, the one that now covers the whole of Hampshire and Isle of Wight, so that does all our mental health services, etc. What do they call the area that covers the catchment of QA Hospital? Guess what? It is Portsmouth and South East Hampshire, ladies and gentlemen. It's what they call it. It is the common name for this area of the county. The common name that's used by things. I belong to the, I'm on the committee of the local Campaign for Real Ale branch. What are we called? Portsmouth and South East Hampshire. I mean, it is just what it calls. And what do people in Gosport, Fareham, Havant, what do they think about it? They don't care. They don't think it's something to go to the wall over. I mean, I don't know why their councillors are that bothered. Just because it hasn't got Fareham in the name, they throw a hissy fit. It's ridiculous. Anything else, they're quite happy. I don't think I've ever had, talking to colleagues from Havant, Gosport and Fareham and going to the NHS, oh, well, you can't call it Portsmouth and South East Hampshire. That's outrageous. They just go, no, it's just normal, isn't it? Just what they do. They don't get into a tiff about it. So why do they have that now? Why doesn't the government listen? And I'd like to go actually to the Secretary of State and the Minister of State who wrote back to us and saw the letter from the Minister of State, who of course is I went to school with. I was a year above her at school on the Wirral. So I'd love it if instead of the Wirral, I've thought of a couple of other names to rename the Wirral Authority, so everyone knows where it is. So let's call it either North West Cheshire or West Merseyside. Now, I'm sure everyone would know where those are, but it's even better. For our lovely Secretary of State, how about, who of course is an MP in Croydon and a bit of Lambeth, so why don't we call it either South Central Greater London or perhaps North Central Surrey? I'm sure that would go down extremely well. Of course, everyone would know where that is. But it's a nonsense. So why do they care? Quite frankly, why do they care? Why don't they just actually go by what they said in the first place, which is this authority that they want, that we don't, so hands off Portsmouth, we still have that opportunity until we have no choice, it's hands off Portsmouth. But why don't they just go, well, we said we base it around that economic area and Portsmouth's really important, so put this in the bloody name. And the same for Southampton. Put them in the name. Don't just say, oh, it's what you agreed to. Because they can't be trusted. This is all because not just the civil servants, the faceless bureaucrats indeed, having been one myself. It's not just them, it's the government ministers. Why do they care? They should just do it and actually listen to it. And I completely agree. Our MPs have been completely AWOL on this, and they need to step up and actually say Portsmouth should be in that name. So, for one last time, hands off Portsmouth, but if we can't have hands off Portsmouth, Portsmouth has to be in that title, my Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Now I have Councillor Darren Sanders. Please.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. As Councillor Mason said earlier on, a name could be just a name. But I will say things I haven't said, I've already said to other colleagues as well. I think one of the most interesting things about this is the papers that you get from government. And my favourite was how to put communities in charge once your council has been reorganised. Because their community has got to be in charge, and you've got to put local people in charge. To which my initial response was, well, don't scrap us then. That's the quickest way to make sure communities are in charge, because then an identifiable community can elect people that they can then sack. But this name debate is actually shows up the inherent weakness of what they're trying to do. Because Fareham Council isn't one community, Salisbury isn't Porchester, isn't Stubbington. Gosport Council, you know, Stokes Bay isn't Bridgemary. In Havant Council, try telling anybody on Hayling Island they live in Havant. Good luck, you may not survive, you may not get off the island. But that's one of the problems that exists. They're all trying to force in a common identity to places where there isn't one. The one place where there is a common identity is Portsmouth. But that's not the sole reason why it should be in this name. As other of my Lib Dem colleagues have outlined, if this council is to even be, this new place, even to begin to overcome the £67 million structural deficit it faces on day one, we're going to need to have a bloody lot of money coming in very, very quickly. We're going to need businesses to want to come to this place. We're going to need more people to come to this place and live in this place. That means trying to put communities in control as much as we can, given the Frankenstein's monster that Labour is choosing to put us in. And therefore, what do you do? Well, if you've got a world-leading brand, you use it. We have Portsmouth, and as Councillor Mason has outlined, it is known pretty much everywhere. If you are an inward investor and you're wanting to go somewhere and you're saying, oh, by the way, come to the Eastern Solent, you have to look it up on a map. You don't have to look Portsmouth up on a map because the brochures will probably include the Spinnaker Tower or it will include HMS Victory. And if we're going to need the money that this council is going to need, if it is going to save even a fraction of the services that people depend upon, people rely on and people want, it needs all the help it can get. And that's why I'm delighted that Simon and Spencer put this motion through today. Very happy to support it. And I hope other Conservative colleagues in particular elsewhere understand that actually if you need help, you need all the tools at your disposal. And if that means putting in the P word, it means putting in the P word. Thank you, my Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Now I ask Councillor Olivier to sum up. Leonie, put up.
Oh, sorry. Am I the last one, Lord Mayor?
Looks like it, yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to end on a high, because I just question what necklace Amanda would wear if we lose the Portsmouth. Because I'm not sure if South East Hampshire Council Bell would fit, or would it be shortened to Sesh? I don't know. It's quite a... We love to go on a sesh in Portsmouth. But, yeah, I just wanted to lift the spirit a bit. So, Amanda, keep doing great work, lady.
Thank you. Can I ask Mr. Gardiner to sum up, please?
I'll do my best. I'm grateful to the contribution of colleagues, selected residents of Uganda, Councillor Whittington's Reallow Group, and even Councillor Heaney all support the ethos of this motion. The only people that seemingly don't are our local Portsmouth MPs. Generations before us built the reputation and standing of this city. Let's hope this Labour government doesn't tear that up. I commend this motion to Council. I'm grateful.
Thank you, Mr. Gardiner. Right.
Given the unanimity here, it might be sensible actually to have a recorded vote.
Well, okay, the procedure we know. We know the drill. So let's stand up then, gentlemen or ladies.
No, that's done the 8.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. As before, all those in support, please stand and take your seat once I say your name. Councillor Ghosh, Councillor Vallely, Councillor Corkery, Councillor Andrews, Councillor Jeffrey, Councillor Oliver, Councillor Kate Dorrington, Councillor Adair, Councillor Winnington, Councillor Brent, Councillor Atwell, Councillor Ansell, Councillor Brown, Councillor Ashmore, Councillor Hunt, Councillor Nick Dorrington, Councillor Perry, Councillor Vernon Jackson, Councillor Gardner, Councillor Heaney, Councillor Barrett, Councillor Mason, Councillor Pitt, Councillor Sanders, Councillor Candlish, Councillor Horton, Councillor Bowsher, Councillor Dyke, Councillor Dent, Councillor Coupland, Councillor Inman, Councillor Tyndall, Councillor Strudwick, Councillor Standen, and Councillor Fudge, and also yourself, Lord Mayor. I don't believe there are any, but any who wish to vote against, please stand. And for completeness, any abstentions? There are none.
Right. 4 is 36, against 0, and abstain 0. So it's carried. Do we need a comfort break? No, I'm comfy. I've got cushion underneath. I'm sorry. Okay, that's fine. I just thought to ask, you know. Right. Yeah, here we go. So I just thought, you know, I can. Right, I now turn on to motion D. Keeping South Sea seafront clean during the summer months. We're doing that one. She's gone. Oh, she's not here. E is not here either. No, are we doing E? E is on. So E. Okay. E. Okay. Support for the Portsmouth UK City of Culture 2029 bid proposed by Councillor Steve Pitt, seconded by Councillor Graham Heaney, and supported by Councillor Simon Bowsher and Councillor Chris Dyke. Now I call upon the proposer, Councillor Steve Pitt, to present and speak to this motion.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. Quite an unusual thing, this. I've been on the council for a long time now, and I don't remember this happening before, but this is a verbatim motion proposed for us to consider by Portsmouth Creates, who are the lead partner, the organisation that this council is funding and supporting, leading on our UK City Culture bid, We Are Pompey 2029. And I do hope that all elected members receive the badges that I asked to be placed in their pigeonholes so they can be visibly supporting this when we're out and about over the next few weeks with the bid going in August. The motion's self-explanatory. Gemma's written it that way. I had asked if all 4 group leaders could co-propose it, but didn't meet the constitutional requirements, so this was the best compromise that was suggested to us. But I'm really grateful to Graham and Simon and Chris for all, pretty much without any delay at all, got responses back saying, yes, happy to do this. We are building up a head of steam here. Just being out and about in the community at various Portsmouth 100 events and other things, the banners popping up all over the place, everybody's having photographs taken, people are sharing it all over social media. The Lions Trail, which went live yesterday, is filling my Facebook feed, and thanks to councillors across the chamber who've been posting positively about it. It's proving to be hugely popular. It's more leverage we can use to show if we can do all this with a pretty limited budget for our centenary year. Think what we could do with those those enormous resources that would come to us if we had the title. And as you'll see from the notice of motion, it's £10 million grant, mixture of revenue and capital for getting the title. Bradford's experience was that in additional match funding and other grants, they drew in another 45 million for their City of Culture year, and other inward investments being mapped out as between 200 and 300 million, depending on which city has actually hosted this event. It's a massive deal for us, but it's mainly a massive opportunity for us to do a number of things. Firstly, celebrate what an incredible place this actually is. We've just had a debate, I was going to say impassioned, but that would be talking mainly about my own performance technique. Debate about the naming, but we all feel the same. We're very, very passionate about our city, and this is an opportunity for it to really shine. We're seeing it light up this year for the centenary, but this could take it on a whole new level. But it's also important because I've always believed, and many of you will have heard me say this if you heard me speak at pretty much anything, that there's absolutely irrefutable proof that all young people who get regular access to a meaningful and regular and meaningful cultural activity, both in a classroom setting and outside of it, will do better in their STEM results, and we want our children and young people to thrive. We know that when people participate in cultural activities, their self-confidence grows. I talk to employers across this city and beyond all the time, and they keep saying to me, we can train young people to do anything, but we need them to have soft skills, we need them to be confident, we need them to understand how to be part of a team. And culture in its broadest form offers all of those opportunities to both our young people and the rest of us as well. Culture breaks down isolation, it brings communities together. It gives us opportunities for those special moments where we celebrate and things that we won't forget. Seeing all of you engaging in different ways in the things that are going on this year fills me with huge hope that we will, with every expectation of doing so, since you all co-sponsored the notice of motion, show Gemma and the Portsmouth Creates team and the whole BID team that we are absolutely one in this chamber and that we are behind them. We've also reached out to those councils around us who will be perhaps joining us in a new local government arrangement in the not too distant future. However much we might not want that to happen, we still need to make sure that the judges are very aware that this is something that has good support across the region. The leader of the County Council has written us a letter of support. I've got a letter of support coming in from the Chief Executive of Brittany Ferries, even Guernsey, where we share a ferry route with, they want to support us. The Mayor of Missouri pledged to write a letter to support us. So that big global family and local family that we are so embedded with are all behind this and they want us to succeed. So huge thanks once again to all of the group leaders for agreeing to support this so that Gemma can clearly demonstrate through a letter that I'll follow up with, which I'll ask you all to sign off on, that this entire council and this city are firmly behind this bid. We are Pompey 2029.
Thank you, Councillor. There is no amendment. The matter is for the council debates. Right. So nobody wants to talk. That's good. So is that means we are all agreeing? Are we showing hands or? Oh yes, you need to sum up. You do need to sum up. That'd be good.
Not for any other reason than I want to remember this. I said something, nobody disagreed with me, and then we voted on it. That's amazing. Colleagues, thank you very much indeed. I will let Gemma know immediately.
Does anybody want to speak? They have hands in there, but they're not pushing the button. I'm gonna. He's summed up, so it's all gone. Okay. Oh my God. So I'll pass to you, James.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. Councillors, have another recorded vote. I'm sure you remember the draw from last time. So all those who are in favour, please stand and take your seat once I say your name. Councillor Ghosh. Councillor Vallely, Councillor Corkery, Councillor Andrews, Councillor Jeffrey, Councillor Oliver, Councillor Kate Dorrington, Councillor Adair, Councillor Winnington, Councillor Brent, Councillor Atwell, Councillor Ansell, Councillor Brown, Councillor Ashmore, Councillor Hunt, Councillor Nick Dorrington, Councillor Perry, Councillor Vernon Jackson, Councillor Gardner, Councillor Heaney, Councillor Barrett, Councillor Mason, Councillor Pitt, Councillor Sanders, Councillor Candlish, Councillor Horton, Councillor Bosher, Councillor Dyke, Councillor Dent, Councillor Coupland, Councillor Inman, Councillor Tyndall, Councillor Strudwick, Councillor Standen and Councillor Fudge, and also Lord Mayor. Are there any against? And again, for completeness, any abstentions? No. Thank you.
Right. So again, 36 for, 0 against, abstained 0. So it's carried. Looks like we're going to go home earlier than we expected. Oh my God. Carried, okay. Motion F now. So, have we done that? That's the job. Final agenda item 14, question members. Standing order 17. No? No? Okay. Yeah. No, I think it's done.
Just on the last item, they were both questions from Councillor Gerarda, who was unable to be here today. So, in line with the protocol, written answers will be supplied.
Right. So, that probably conclude our meeting. But before we finish, I would like you all to join me in wishing England team for best of luck tomorrow. Right. Can I go home now? I'm going home.